Hello friends, I am Kishore Patwardhan and I work for the Department of Kriya Sharira in the Faculty of Ayurveda, Banaras Hindu University. And in today's session, we are going to look at the overview of research publication process. Especially under this topic, we will be taking up what is peer review, what is the overall publication process, what do we mean by scientometrics, and what are the very commonly used uh, indices, author index or author metrics, and journal metrics, and finally how to choose the right journal to publish your research. So these are certain important topics that we will be dealing with in today's lecture. So the first question is, why to publish? Why should one publish his or her work, research work? It is basically because without publications, science cannot grow. Second is the duty, whether it is the duty of a researcher to publish the research. In most of the cases, yes, because we utilize funds mostly from government agencies uh, which fund the research projects, and this involves the public money or taxpayers money, and hence the taxpayer who funds your research has also right to know what is happening with his or her money. Hence it is actually the duty of a researcher to publish his or her results, right? Then third important aspect of publications is that publications bring you recognition in the field, and also it will serve as a permanent record, right, of your work. So a publication profile contributes to the overall uh, productivity of the individual or the institution. Hence publications are often taken as the parameters to evaluate the overall productivity of a department, of an or of an individual. Then there will be some other benefits as well, like you may get placement, or you may get promotions, or you may get funding, etc., based on the publication profile that you have. Well, where to publish your research? So I'm showing a set of periodicals. This is another set of periodicals. So there are two sets of periodicals that I have shown, and whether you should be thinking of publishing with the first set of periodicals here, or you should be considering this set of periodicals while publishing your research. Basically, to answer this question, we need to know the differences between the two sets of publications or periodicals. So first set of publications or periodicals, it falls under the popular literature, whereas the second set falls under the scholarly literature or scholarly journals. So each set has got its own importance, right? I don't mean to say that this is better or that is better. No, each set of periodicals, it has got its own importance based on the readership, right? The popular literature is read by the layman, common man in a society, right, to derive some basic knowledge about the scientific research or scientific progress. But in scholarly journals, you publish your research in an exclusive manner, which is read by either scholars in your field, or researchers in the field, scientists in the field, or maybe at the maximum students in the field, right? But not laymen. So laymen or lay people, they do not consult these scholarly journals, right? They depend on popular literature to derive their knowledge on science. That is how the readership of these two sets of literature is different. Now, there are fundamental differences between the popular literature and the scholarly literature. So usually in popular literature, the articles are usually shorter and they provide an overview of the topic, broad overview. Then authors are usually not the experts in the field. Even the names and credentials of the authors are often not provided. These articles are written in non-technical language, and articles do not follow a specific format or a structure. And lastly, the articles are not evaluated by a team of experts in the field. Rather, they are evaluated only by the editorial board. So these are some important features of popular literature. Whereas when you come to scholarly literature, usually the articles are longer and they provide in-depth analysis of a given topic, specific topic. Authors usually are the experts or the specialists in the field, and names and credentials of the authors are always provided, always, right? And they are written in a highly technical and scientific language, and they always follow a specific structure like abstract, methods, results, discussion, bibliography, and so on. So there is a specific structure that all scholarly articles follow. And lastly, the articles are reviewed and critically evaluated by a board of experts in the field, right? Whereas this is not the case in case of popular literature. So in scholarly literature, the publications or the manuscripts are read and critically evaluated by some peers or friends. Peers means friends, right? So the experts, they are the experts in the field. They evaluate the articles and then they send their comments, and these comments are once again sent back to the authors, and that is how the articles are revised. And finally, when the article meets the expected standards, then only it gets published. So this picture explains the overall process of the peer review, right? Step 1 indicates that a study is conducted, research is conducted, and then step 2, findings of the research are written and communicated to a journal. Step 3, the editorial board of the journal, it reviews or reads the articles, and then they send this article to the experts in the field. That is the 4th step, right? And reviewers, these reviewers are the experts in the field who have done some established work in the given area of the research, and then these reviewers, they give their feedback, and this feedback is communicated back to authors through the editorial board, right? And finally, when the article meets the expected standards, then it gets accepted, otherwise it may get rejected, and finally it gets published. So if the article finally meets the expected international standards, usually, right, it gets published in the journal. So this is the overall process of peer review. Now the peer review is of different types. It can be classified as basically pre-publication peer review and post-publication peer review. These are the two popular models of peer review that are existing as of now, as of today. Now, pre-publication peer review means before the publication takes place, the article or manuscript is reviewed. Okay, again, there could be either blinded peer review or open peer review, right? Under pre-publication review, there could be two types, blinded and open. In blinded peer review, there is some blinding that is happening. Either the reviewer identity is blinded, or the author identity is blinded, or both the identities are blinded. Okay, so single blind means authors do not know the identity of the reviewers, but reviewers know the identity of the authors. Whereas in double blind review process, both the identities of authors as well as the identities of the reviewers are blinded, right? They do not know the identities, right, of either, I mean, authors or the reviewers, right? Both the identities are blinded. Then there is something called open peer review. In open peer review, the reviewers' identities are known to the authors and author identities are known to the reviewers. There are some journals which follow pre-publication open peer review process, right, where the authors' names are revealed to the reviewers and reviewer names are also revealed to the authors. So both, I mean, this is how the open peer review works. Whereas in post publication, it is always open, right? The reviewer identity is almost always revealed, and author's identity is already known because it is the published paper. So you publish first and then you review. That is called post-publication review. So these are the two types of reviews. Now, coming to the two models of publishing. So popularly, there are basically two models of publishing. One is open access model and another one is conventional or subscription based model. And nowadays, there is a third model evolving, which is called hybrid publishing, right? So a journal, whether it is open access or conventional or a hybrid journal, right, depends on the accessibility of the paper for a reader. Okay, in open access journals, the articles, published articles, are available for reading for free of cost to a reader. A reader can access these articles for free of cost. Okay, whereas in conventional mode of publishing, the title and abstract and the author details are published and they are made public. Basically, anybody is able to read the title, author names, affiliations, and this, I mean, journal details and abstract. So this, only this much of the portion of the article is available for free of cost. And if the reader wishes to read the full article, then either he has to or she has to subscribe to the journal, or they will have to pay for the particular article, pay per article, right? For downloading the article, they need to pay. So whether the reader needs to pay or not, or whether the reader needs to subscribe or not, this depends, I mean, this determines whether the journal is open access or a conventional kind of journal. So in open access journal, full papers are available for free of cost for a reader. But so if readers do not have to pay money, neither they have to nor they have to subscribe the journal, then from where do these publishers earn money, right? Because see, any publication requires funding, right? Without funds, any publishing house cannot publish the journals. So open access journals, they charge the authors what is known as article processing charges or article processing fee, right? So this article processing charges, these article processing charges are paid by the authors, and often the funding agencies also, they fund the article processing charges, right? While doing research itself, you can ask your funding agency to give you sufficient amount of money so that you can meet the open access expenses, right? So this is one model where the authors, they have to pay the money for publishing their work. Okay, and yeah, with the problem with open access publishing is that inherent quality control is not required from a publisher point of view, because the authors are paying the money and they're not bothered about readers. Hence, this happens to be one of the most commonly misused model of publication, because they know that there are authors who are desperate to get their papers published, and such journals, they misuse this desperation, and they charge high fees to the authors, and authors pay the fees and they get their papers published, and journals or journal publishers are often least bothered about the readership, who reads or not, they are not bothered about. Okay, this is the problem with open access journals. But in conventional journals, there is an inherent requirement for the maintenance of quality standards. Otherwise, if the quality is not maintained, there won't be any reader, right? If there are no readers to read the journal, right, there is no subscription fee, there is no article downloading fee that a publisher can earn, because this is in the conventional model of publishing, authors do not pay anything, right? The publishers, they do not charge anything, right? From the authors, they do not take any payment, but they take payment from the readers. So it is always necessary for such publishers to maintain high quality standards. Otherwise, one day there may not be the readers for that journal at all. Hence, the publishing may not be feasible. So the third kind of journals that are emerging these days are called hybrid journals, where if the authors are willing to make their article open access, right, they have got the option to pay the money and make the article open access, right? If the authors do not have sufficient funds to meet the expenses of open access, then such articles will be published as traditional articles, right, conventional mode, right, where only abstract and title will be made available for free of cost. Otherwise, if the reader wishes to read the full article, he or she needs to pay money, right? So these are the two types of publishing models. And coming to which journal to consider while submitting your paper. Suppose you have done your research, conducted your research, and you want to communicate that research to a journal. Now, which journal to consider, right? First thing is that it must be peer reviewed, that is refereed or peer reviewed journal. So simply, if you see that on the journal website it is written that it is peer reviewed, it often does not mean that it is actually peer reviewed, because as I said, the open access journal model is often misused, and there are many low quality journals, misleading journals, which claim themselves to be peer reviewed, but they do not carry out any kind of peer review and they publish anything and everything. So it has to be genuinely peer reviewed, right? So how can you ensure that it is really peer reviewed? Often it could be difficult, right? So the best method is to ensure that a journal is really of good quality. Then you must go for the search for the indexing status of the journal. If it is indexed, for example, say in PubMed or Medline or Scopus, Web of Science, on most of the occasions, it should be a peer-reviewed journal, right? Other than peer-reviewed journals, usually such databases, reputed databases, they do not index these journals, right? If the journal gets indexed with these databases, it means that it is a peer-reviewed journal. So it is difficult for a journal to get indexed with PubMed or Scopus, right? If it is not peer-reviewed, Scopus or PubMed is not going to index that journal. So this is one of the easiest way to find out whether a journal is peer-reviewed or not. So hence, the second criteria that you should be looking for is whether the journal that you are considering is indexed with widely referred databases, right? For our field, for biomedical sciences, Medline is the best database, right? To get entry into PubMed, I mean, the Medline is very difficult. PubMed is still comparatively easier, but Medline is difficult. So Medline is the gold standard for biomedical journals, right? Next comes PubMed, right? And then Scopus, and then Web of Science, possibly. This is how I would evaluate. But again, I would suggest that you go for such a journal that is indexed with at least 2 databases to ensure that yes, this is really a good journal. PubMed and Medline, or PubMed and Scopus, Medline and Scopus, Medline and Web of Science. So such permutation and combinations you make, and you choose such a journal that is indexed with at least 2 databases. Then I think you need not bother about the quality of the journal, right? It has to be of good, quality or standard. Of course, don't take Google Scholar seriously, because Google Scholar is nothing but it is a search engine. It is not a database. If a journal claims that it is indexed with Google Scholar, it doesn't mean anything basically, because Google is a search engine, popular search engine, and it indexes anything and everything that is available on the web, right? And especially if it is a article published with some journal, then it will be indexed with the Google Scholar. Now, again, better to choose a journal that has got an established standing in the field. So for how many years it is in publication, right? So volume number usually gives you an idea about how many years it is there in publication, right? Since how many years it is publishing. So older journals are always better because they have got some established standing in the field. Again, you look for editorial board. Editorial board should be consisting of genuine and reputed researchers who should be currently publishing, right? And they should have good publications in good databases, right? That ensures that yes, the editorial board is experienced, right? And if the editorial board consists of editors who represent different parts of the globe, maybe a few from Europe, a few from Americas, a few from Asia, a few from some other Australia, and so on, right? So that is how you can tell that a journal is international. Otherwise, international or national has got no other meaning, right? Because in the day of internet, anything that is published in in the internet, it becomes internationally accessible, right? So now, what is international journal? So the meaning is that the editorial board should be of international character. Now, before submitting the paper to a journal, ask these questions, right? Is the journal available online? If it is not there, not available online, I think better not to submit to such journal, right? Is it indexed with recognized databases, as I just mentioned, right? Is it an open access journal? Does it have an impact factor? Right? I'll come to what is impact factor. Similarly, does it have a site score? I'll discuss in a short while from now what is impact factor and what is site score, and under which quadrant of SCImago journal rank does it fall. So these are certain journal metrics which you should consider, right? Good journals, established journals, usually they have either impact factor or site score or SCImago ranking. Okay, so these are some very commonly used metrics, right, to evaluate the journal. So these are certain questions that you should be asking whether whenever you are considering a journal for submitting your manuscript. Now, all these metrics, maybe impact factor, maybe site score, or maybe even SCImago journal rank, all such metrics are based on the citation analysis. Okay, so what is citation analysis? So before citation analysis, we should know what is citation, right? Suppose this is a paper that I'm showing you on my slide. So this is the reference section of the paper. Now in the reference section, there are several papers which have been listed as references, right? There are 8 papers that have been referenced. It means that this particular paper cites 8 different papers. Okay, or each of these 8 papers has received 1 citation because of this paper. This is how you can understand. Okay, so this paper has cited 8 different papers. This is one meaning. Another meaning is that each of these 8 papers, they have received 1 citation each because of this publication. So this citation analysis is calculated, and then based on the number of citations a journal receives, right, it receives its own ranking and metrics or different types of metrics. So one of the most commonly used journal metric happens to be impact factor, right? One of the most popular journal metric happens to be impact factor. So what is impact factor? Impact factor is awarded to any journal based on the Web of Science citations. Okay, and only those journals that are indexed with Web of Science, they receive impact factor, right? So no other journal receives impact factor which is not indexed with the Web of Science. And this impact factor is awarded every year by Clarivate Analytics in its yearly published journal citation reports. Now, what is an impact factor? The impact factor of a journal is the average number of citations each published paper has received during the 2 preceding years. This is how the impact factor is calculated. So for example, if a journal has an impact factor of 5 in 2019, let us say, what does it mean? its papers published in 2017 and 18 must have received 5 citations each on an average. Then only that journal will have an impact factor of 5 for the year 2019. So this is how impact factor is calculated. There is another journal metric which is getting popular these days, and this is called site score. And what is the difference between site score and impact factor? There are a few differences. The basic difference being the site score is awarded based on the Scopus citation. So those journals that are indexed with Scopus, they get site score. Okay, if a journal is not indexed with Scopus, it won't receive the site score. This is one difference. Second difference is that its calculation is similar to impact factor, but it considers the citations for the articles published during last 4 years instead of last 2. Now the third popular metric, journal metric, happens to be Scimago journal rank. Okay, so Scimago journal rank is again measured based on the Scopus citations. This is once again based on Scopus. But here what happens is the journals receive the journal rank based on the field, right? So that a particular journal belonging to one field can be compared with the journal of another field, because the citation uh, frequency, right, and the kind of citations, it varies from field to field. For instance, Ayurveda, it receives a minimal number of citations usually, right? Whereas maybe genetics or genomics or maybe molecular biology or maybe microbiology, there are n number of good journals in these fields, and that is how the citations generated every year are several, maybe thousands of times greater than the total number of citations received for Ayurveda articles. So if you want to compare one journal of Ayurveda and another journal of microbiology, how do you do it? Now you go for Scimago journal rank, under which quadrant the journal falls, right? If you know this, then you will be able to compare the different journals from different fields. For example, the Journal of Ayurveda and Integrative Medicine falls under Q2 category, right? Under complementary and alternative medicine field. And SJR for 2019 happens to be 0.31. Okay, so that is how the journal ranking is done in Scimago. Now, so when you consider a journal, please go through the site score of the journal, impact factor of the journal, and also maybe the Scimago journal rank. And apart from that, you may also have to consider some other factors, like, is the time taken for the editorial decision reasonable? And usually most of the journals, good journals, they display on their website what was the average duration taken or required for the first editorial decision to be delivered. So if it is short, it is always better, right? So that early decision is always better. Is the online submission process convenient? Is there a manuscript tracking facility? Is the acceptance rate known? Does it charge article processing fee? Is this processing fee transparent, right? Are there color printing charges, reprint charges, submission fee, etc.? So all this should be very, very clearly analyzed before you submit your manuscript. Now, of course, you should be very careful with fake impact factors or fake journal metrics. Now, because of this mushrooming of especially the open access journals, there are many misleading journals that have come up, misleading publishers and misleading journals, right? They claim to have some high impact number, right, impact factor, but basically this is not the actual impact factor given by Clarivate Analytics, right? So there are many new types of impact factors that have been invented by these journals, so they do not have any value, right? So you should be very careful when you submit your paper to a journal, right? Ensure that the impact factor or whatever, right, is being claimed is genuine, right? In author pays of author pays model of open access. You should be very careful with this. Fake peer review process. There could be several journals. There are several journals which fake the peer review, right? Irrespective of the manuscript that you submit, you are going to get only the specific template of a review, right? So that to fulfill the criteria of peer review, but actual peer review doesn't take place. So there are many such low quality journals with which you have to be very, very careful. Don't fall prey to call for papers, right? And then claims such as under the process of PubMed indexing doesn't mean anything, right? There is nothing like under the process, right? There are only two possibilities. Either the journal is indexed with PubMed or it is not indexed, right? There is nothing like under the process. So such bogus journals, right? Low quality journals use these phrases to mislead the authors. Claims such as indexed in Elsevier, right? Elsevier is a publisher. It is not a database, right? It is again a misleading statement. So there was a blog, scholarlyoa.com, which was being authored by Jeffrey Beal. He was a professor in library sciences, and he used to list the potentially dubious or unreliable journals, and also the unreliable publishers. So this was a very popular list called Beal's list. Okay, so of course, because of some controversial things that happened with this blog, he had to take this blog down. But yeah, he had identified several metrics, journal metrics, which are bogus. For example, the Advanced Science Index or Directory of Journal Quality Factor, International Scientific Indexing, SJIF Impact Factor, GISI Impact Factor, Global Impact Factor, Universal Impact Factor, Cosmos Impact Factor. See, there are so many impact factors and other indexings that have come up over the years, recent years, and they do not have any value. So you should be very, very careful. There is a list again. The list published by Jeffrey Beal is still available on another site, Stop Predatory Journals. This is a site, predatoryjournals.com, where you will get a good list of journals which should be avoided. This is the list of journals that should be avoided. Okay. Now there is recently another list that has come up by UGC. University Grants Commission has published a white list of journals. It is called CARE, Consortium for Academic and Research Ethics. So this journal list is carefully curated after carefully subjecting each journal to certain accepted parameters, and when a journal meets these protocols, then only it gets enters, or rather it gets an entry into this journal list. So you can also refer to this list before selecting the journal. So so far we discussed about the journal metrics, right, and how to select a journal. Now let us also discuss a few things about author level metrics. So there is something called H index, Hirsch index. So H index is assessed often to assess the productivity of an author, and sometimes it is also used to assess or evaluate the contributions of a department or of an institution, or also sometimes to evaluate a journal, right? So the number of citations, again, this is also based on the number of citations, right? So H index is based on the distribution of citations that a researcher receives for his or her publications over a period of time. So this is something very important, right? If a publisher, or if a researcher keeps publishing his work or research, then only his H index will increase. Otherwise, irrespective of the number of citations that he or she might receive, the H index won't increase. So this actually evaluates the contribution or productivity of an author over the years, over the several years, right? So it reflects both the number of publications and also the number of citations. So these are the two things that are taken into consideration while calculating H index. So I'll give you one example. This is one example of an author. Now what you do is, he has published or she has published 12 papers, let us say. Now what we will be doing is, we will arrange all these papers in a descending order based on the citations. So the paper with the maximum citations is placed at position number 1. Position number 2 is the second paper that has received second highest citations, right? So go on placing such, all the publications in descending fashion, right, based on the number of citations received. Now you ask the question, is the citation number or number of citations equal to or greater than the position of the publication, right? Go on answering yes, 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 and till you get an answer no, right? You exclude that particular row where you have got no, and then just the last row where you got yes, right? That is the H index. For example, in this case, the 10th paper has received 12 citations. Okay, so 12 is greater than 10. Okay, but 11th paper has received only 8 citations. So 8 is not equal to or greater than 11. Hence, the H index of this author will be 10. Okay, so the definition is, H index is the largest number H such that H publications have at least H citations. So here in this case, 10 publications have got at least 10 citations. That is why this author's H index is 10. Okay. Now author 2, he also has got H index of 10. Okay. But see, what is the difference between first author and second author? Here the total number of citations received by the second author is only 222. Whereas in case of first author, the total number of citations received happens to be 4,302. And irrespective of such huge difference between the total number of citations received, the H index is same. Got it? So this exactly is the problem with H index. H index, though, is a good indicator of overall productivity, but it fails to differentiate between highly cited authors and the authors that have received only average number of citations. So to overcome this, some other indexes or indices have been developed. So H index works properly only for comparing scientists working in the same field. This is the limitation of H index, right? The H index does not differentiate between books and articles, and disregards the number of authors of a citing paper, right? And also it disregards the highly cited publication. So these are the drawbacks of H index. Hence, we should know what is G index. And G index is a better index that overcomes the drawbacks of H index, right? So what is G index? So G index is calculated based on the distribution of citations received by a given researcher's publication, such that given a set of articles ranked in the decreasing order of the number of citations that they received, the G index is the unique largest number such that the top G articles received together at least G square citations. In this example, see, the H index is 8, but G index is 10, because 10th paper has received 5 citations, but in the last column there is a cumulative citation score or cumulative citations, right? You add on the total number of citations. See, first paper has received 20 citations. Second paper has received 18. So 20 plus 18, 38. So 38 becomes the second number in the last column. Similarly, 38 plus 16, 54. So this is how you go on adding the total number of citations. Now, the total number of citations received is 116. And here, if you uh, uh, square the number 10, 10 into 10, it is 100. And 116 is greater than 100. Hence, 10 is the G index, but it could be only 10. Okay. See, this is another example where the G index is 12, but H index is only 4. See, because in this case, the total number of citations received by those 4 papers is very huge, right? Hence, this is a good indicator, right, which can compensate the drawbacks of H index, right? Though H index is only 4, G index is 12. Now, this is about the publication process, the author level metrics, the journal metrics, and the suggestions about selecting the right kind of journal. Now, publication is only the last step of your research, right? You should be concentrating on the quality of research first, and then you should concentrate on the quality of publication. And of course, without good research, there cannot be good publications, right? So all efforts, if they are only aimed at publication and not aimed at doing good research, it will be actually meaningless. So what I would urge is to go through certain guidelines for conducting your research, for conducting good research based on the study type. There are several internationally accepted guidelines, and all these guidelines are available on Equator Network. This is the Equator Network, where you will find all these standard guidelines and statements depending on the study type. So I would urge all of you to plan your study properly, execute your study properly, and only then focus on publication. Yeah, with this I conclude the session. Thank you.